From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
This battle will go on for a while because now, in addition to the collective bargaining fight, we have all these specific cuts to Medicare, to Badger Care. It will kick 70,000 people off the rolls of Badger Care, to the school systems, to children and families. It's a very dramatic budget with very dramatic cuts.
A Wisconsin judge has struck down Governor Scott Walker's law that eliminates nearly all collective bargaining rights of state employees. We'll go to Madison for the latest. Then what are the impacts of fracking?
We've begun to look at what's being used to drill a well, data that the government should be collecting but isn't collecting. We've been able to get our hands on some of that. Every environmental law we wrote to protect public health is ignored.
Fracking hearings were held yesterday in Albany, New York. We'll speak with one of those who testified, the biologist Sandra Steingraber, author of the new book, Raising Elijah, Protecting Our Children in an Age of Environmental Crisis. Then, when you follow your friends on Facebook or run a search on Google, what information comes out and what gets left out?
We really need the internet to be that thing that we all dreamed of it being. We need it to connect us all together. We need it to introduce us to new ideas and new people and different perspectives. And it's not going to do that if it leaves us all isolated in a web of one. Thank you.
We'll speak with Eli Paris, our former executive director of MoveOn.org, about the filter bubble, what the internet is hiding from you. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Yemen appears to be on the verge of civil war as government warplanes have reportedly bombed fighters linked to a prominent Yemeni tribal leader outside the capital of Sana'a. The airstrikes mark a further escalation in recent fighting that's left at least 109 people dead over the past week. An alliance of tribal leaders has warned embattled President Ali Abdullah Saleh to either step down or face civil war. Tribal leader Sadiq Al-Ahmar said there is no longer a chance for mediation with Saleh.
The people are on our side, and Allah is with us and before the people. They are with us because Ali Abdullah Saleh has been unjust for the last 30 years, and he is considered to be the biggest liar of all liars in the world.
In Egypt, thousands of pro-democracy protesters are gathering in Cairo's Tahrir Square today for what's been dubbed the Second Friday of Rage to protest against the ruling military council. Activists are calling for an end to military trials, the lifting of the 3-decade-old emergency law, the formation of civilian government, and the acceleration of trials of former figures from the Mubarak regime. President Obama signed a law renewing 3 expiring provisions of the Patriot Act shortly following the House's passage of the measure in a 250 to 153 vote. The provisions empower law enforcement officials to obtain roving wiretaps on suspected foreign agents, track non-citizen lone wolves suspected of terrorism, and obtain certain business and even library records. The American Civil Liberties Union criticized lawmakers for passing the provisions without adding the proper privacy safeguards. The provisions were extended despite a warning from 2 Democratic senators that the Justice Department has been secretly interpreting the Patriot Act in a way to enable domestic surveillance activities that many members of Congress do not even understand. Oregon Democratic Senator Ron Wyden, a member of the Intelligence Committee, accused the Obama administration of relying on a secret law to expand domestic surveillance.
Americans know that their government will sometimes conduct secret operations, but they don't believe the government ought to be writing secret law. And the reason why we have felt so strongly about this issue of secret law is that it violates the trust that Americans place in their government, and it undermines public confidence in government institutions and agencies, making it harder for them to operate effectively.
In other news from Washington State, the Republican-led House has passed a defense in Washington, D.C., has passed a defense spending bill Thursday with a number of controversial provisions. If signed into law, the bill would prohibit any non-U.S. citizen suspected of terrorism from receiving a federal trial, regardless of where they were arrested. In addition, the bill expands the president's ability to wage an endless worldwide war against terrorism suspects and against nations suspected of supporting them even when there's no connection to the September 11th attacks. Laura Murphy of the American Civil Liberties Union criticized the bill, saying, quote, a new authorization of worldwide war will mean unrestricted powers to use the military at home and abroad. In Afghanistan, 8 U.S. troops died Thursday when they were hit by 2 different explosions while on foot patrol in Kandahar province. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives came close Thursday to passing a measure to speed up the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. The vote was 215 to 204, with 178 Democrats and 26 Republicans supporting the measure. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has arrived in Pakistan in an effort to mend relations following the secret U.S. raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Clinton said Pakistan must make decisive steps in the days ahead to fight terrorism. Meanwhile, Pakistan's agreed to allow the CIA to send a forensics team to examine the compound where bin Laden was killed. Subsidiaries of Bank of America and Morgan Stanley have agreed to settle federal lawsuits for wrongfully foreclosing on the homes of at least 178 active-duty military service members. The banks have agreed to pay out at least $22 million to compensate the victims. Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin signed a health care reform bill Thursday that will make Vermont the first state in the nation to offer single-payer health care. The Vermont Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act aims to stem the rising cost of health care and provide universal coverage. Governor Shumlin held a signing ceremony in Vermont's capital, Montpelier.
We gather here today to launch the first single-payer health care system in America. To do in Vermont what has taken too long. Have a health care system the best in the world that treats health care as a right and not a privilege. Most importantly, a health care system that is sustainable, that spends our health care dollars making Vermonters healthy, not on insurance company profits, and not on waste and inefficiency. We will get this done in Vermont.
The U.S. Supreme Court has upheld an Arizona law that allows the state to shut down businesses that hire undocumented immigrants. The law has been opposed by both business and immigrant rights organizations. In his dissenting opinion, Justice Stephen Breyer expressed concern that employers in Arizona may now err on the side of not hiring anyone who even looks like he or she could be an undocumented immigrant. The ruling is separate from another controversial Arizona immigration law now making its way through the court system. That law, SB 1070, empowers state and local law enforcement to stop, question, and arrest whoever they suspect may be an undocumented immigrant. Serbian officials have announced plans to extradite former military general Ratko Mladic to The Hague to face trial on genocide charges following his arrest Thursday after 15 years on the run. Mladic will be tried for his role in the 1995 Srebrenica massacre and the siege of Sarajevo. Serge Bramertz, the chief prosecutor at the UN War Crimes Tribunal, described the arrest of Mladic as extremely important.
I also think it's a very strong signal in general in relation to supporting international justice, because it means that sooner or later those allegedly responsible for the worst crimes will be one day arrested. So I think it's very important. Now it's up to Serbia to go through their proceedings. We will see what will happen in this regard in the coming days. And of course we hope very much that he will arrive as soon as possible in The Hague to make sure that his trial can start as soon as possible.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting Saudi Arabia is rallying Muslim nations across the Middle East and Asia to join an informal Sunni alliance against Iran and Shiite protesters in Bahrain. Critics warn the Saudi effort could further destabilize the region and spark sectarian violence. Saudi officials have approached Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Central Asian states to lend diplomatic support and potentially military assistance to help stifle a majority Shiite revolt in Sunni-led Bahrain. A Pakistani battalion has been in Bahrain since before the unrest began to help train Bahraini forces, but reportedly hasn't taken part in the crackdown. And French police detained some 100 people protesting against the Group of 8 summit on Thursday, as protests sprung up across the country to mark the 2-day summit. In the city of Le Havre, demonstrators occupied a branch of the BNP bank that said help finance the nuclear industry.
On est venu ici pour dénoncer deux choses. We're here to condemn two things. Nuclear power, because BNP is the bank that invests the most in nuclear power in the world at a global level. This is also the bank that does the most tax evasion in France. 1.9 billion euros of tax evasion in 2010. It's a record. 69 branches in the tax havens.
Un record. 189 filiales dans les paradis fiscaux.
In Paris, Doctors Without Borders hung a giant banner advocating free medical care outside the Paris Stock Exchange building. Another group of activists managed to get inside the Paris offices of credit rating agency Standard & Poor's. Greenpeace Executive Director Kumi Naidoo harshly criticized the G8 summit.
The G8 is basically a cartel, self-appointed cartel of 8 dominant nations which carry actually the biggest responsibility collectively for climate change and a whole range of other issues. What we are concerned about the G8 is, and if you look at the draft communiques that are being leaked now, is it's a regurgitation every year of the same commitments repackaged and restated. This is not leadership, this is fraudulence, and it needs to be addressed.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.